includes the city of Dickinson, and Divide County, which includes the city of Crosby, both have been dealing with a multitude of industrial projects and have written very comprehensive ordinances. Divide County, for example, has a 3-mile setback from a residence. Stark County has a 1-mile setback from a property line and a 2-mile setback from inhabitable dwellings of non-participating landowners. Both counties have provisions, which is important, for reducing setbacks with agreed upon variances. This gives the opportunity for non-participating landowners to be part of the conversation. While utilizing the option of variances, I propose that this zoning board consider Stark County's ordinance of a 1-mile setback from property line and a 2-mile setback from non-participating landowners' inhabitable dwellings. This will provide parity among landowners and ultimately give all parties a seat at the table. I conclude, and I reiterate, the focus of this zoning board is to guide and limit development, protect property values, ensure public health and safety, and to maintain the character of our communities. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great point here. James Myrie.
Hello, my name is James Murray. I was born and raised here, went to college, got a job, worked for a few 10, 15 years, and moved back here. I moved back here in 2012 because this is a place that's worth living at. It simply is a place worth living at. We got a great community, we got great people. Everybody in here is friends and neighbors, until this. When I grew up here, I learned what it meant to be a neighbor. How to get along with people, you help people when they have a problem, you know what it's like to be a neighbor. You do unto others as you would want done to you. I'm about as small a landowner as you can come by. I own a farmstead and a quarter of land. Pretty small peanuts compared to most landowners in the footprint. I signed the contract on May 28th, 2019. Before we signed, we were promised at several of these meetings that we will never put a tower in some place where it causes conflict. We'll never put a tower someplace where it causes a problem. And I've heard that from many of the people in this room. And do you know the first time I was contacted about tower placement around my house where I lay my head down at night? 1 month ago, from Eric Myrie. He pulled in the yard and talked to me and told me there was going to be a tower west of my house. That was the first time in 6 years. And I have a problem with that. Us as small landowners, we had to figure out, do we fight these guys or do we go with them? With the promise of talking, communication, cooperation, figuring things out, let's go with them. Maybe we'll have a voice. Maybe we'll have a voice on where these things will be, right? So we decided to participate. So I signed my soul away to Big Wind when I signed that contract in 2019. And I got a couple of towers that are coming up within a mile of my place. My folks got 6 or 7 towers that are going to be going up within a mile of their place. Do you know how many times my folks were contacted about where those tower locations were going to be? 0. None. And that's ridiculous. So going back to the contract, I had to talk during the neutral portion of this, right? Because I'm bound to by contract, right here. This is my contract. I'm bound by this contract, so I cannot talk in a negative way about wind towers, anything like that. Because my contract bounds me to that. And anybody else that signs that contract is bound by the same agreement, right? So if I can't acknowledge the bad on wind, how can anybody else that signed that contract, how can they acknowledge the bad about wind? And there's individuals on this board that have signed this contract. We have a county commissioner that signed this contract. How can they acknowledge the bad? So, going on, who's in the project? About 35% of the towers on the land are owned by people that live in the footprint. That means 65% of the people that sign this contract don't live inside the footprint. They don't have to deal with this stuff. They don't have to look at them every day. We do. I think the problem with the state guidelines is that they've been guidelines on towers that have been much smaller than this. The research that I've looked at, none of it covers towers of this magnitude. And the landowners are stretched out from all over the place, from Huntington Beach, California to Lansdale, Pennsylvania. So I think we need to have a meaningful setback of at least 1 mile. These things are huge. I live there. I have property rights too. I'm a small property owner, but damn it, I have rights too. The one thing that I think needs to be done is enough of this bulldozing by throwing cash to grease the skids. This is ridiculous. Throw more money at it, throw more money at it, throw more money at it. Why can't people talk? Why can't people communicate? I was told there would be ample communication as far as tower locations around my house prior to signing that contract. Where is it? It was 6 years. Ladies and gentlemen of the zoning board, don't be blinded by the promise of the cash. Your job is to look after the health, safety, and the well-being of citizens that you serve. Remember, do unto others as you would want done to you. Would you want to live under one of them? Don't sell me out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. At the heart of our market-based economy are two simple signals, profit and loss. When something's profitable, it means value is being created. When something loses money, it means value is being destroyed. Sustained losses signal that a business or project should end, and its resources, labor, land, and materials, should be redirected to more productive uses. That brings me to wind energy. Warren Buffett once said about wind towers, they don't make sense without the tax credit. What he meant is simple. Wind towers don't make money. They're not profitable on their own. They depend on taxpayer subsidies to stay afloat. That means they're creating monetary losses, destroying value, and diverting our resources, including labor, away from places where they could do more good. Think about labor. It's not unlimited. We need skilled workers in countless areas, from mechanics fixing farm equipment to construction workers building homes. Redirecting them to wind jobs means other employers must raise wages to compete for help. And those higher wages, they show up in your repair bills, your groceries, and everything else. Now let's talk about the local tax revenue, the wind developers promise. According to Century Code, 1/3 of that tax is claimed by the state. Then the state withholds 75% of the tower tax revenue going to our schools. And there are other costs, like gravel depletion for road repairs that aren't fully offset. These promised revenues, they're not as generous as they sound. And when wind developers offer monetary pledges to communities, we should ask, where does that money come from? Where does that money come from? From us. Utility customers pay higher rates. Taxpayers cover the subsidies. In other words, we're being incentivized with our own money. That's not a gift. It's a sophisticated cycle of wealth redistribution. From you, all of us, the consumers and taxpayers, to corporate developers and tower owners. The result? More inflation, higher costs, lower living standards. A fair question in this debate is, don't landowners have the right to put what they want on their land? I believe yes. as long as it doesn't harm others. But a 700-foot tower with flashing lights, loud whooshing blades, shadow flicker, possible health hazards, that's not just someone using their land. That's a nuisance to neighbors. It devalues nearby properties, disturbs rural peace, and transforms our landscape in ways many of us did not sign up for. It's ironic that the city of New Rockford is cracking down on messy yards in town, supposedly to protect neighbors from visual annoyance or lost power bills. Yet rural residents are expected to accept industrial wind turbines without the same protections.
Waste.
I believe we deserve equal consideration. Let me be clear. My real frustration is with government policy. This entire situation is the result of mandates and subsidies. Years ago, I thought wind energy was maybe a good idea for our area. I've changed my mind. Because I looked at the numbers, the economics, and the lived consequences. Before returning to farm, I sold used cars. And occasionally we would have a buyer that would get cold feet and bring the car back. No harm done. We gave them their money, they moved on. But if these towers go up, there's no return policy. No takebacks, no do-overs. As members of the zoning board, your job is to protect the health, safety, and property of residents. I urge you to err on the side of caution. Setbacks must be as wide as reasonably possible. In conclusion, wind towers represent a massive misallocation of labor and materials. They distort our economy, increase inflation, and lower our standard of living. They promise revenue using our own money while transferring wealth from the public to private developers. We need to think long term. Once these towers are here, they're here. Let's protect our communities and make decisions that truly serve the people who live here. Thank you.
Good evening, zoning board. My name is Wells McGifford. I work for PRC Wind. I guess I want to step back and say we are guests in your community. I think you heard from our CEO and other members of how we got involved in this. Over 7 years ago, we were invited to come to your community, and I just want to comment that this is not what we want. We don't want the divisiveness in this beautiful rural community. This is not why we're here. We were invited as guests. We believe that there were rules in place that we could play fairly, conduct business, and provide economic development. That is zoning. It's part of it. Economic development is part of zoning. And our goal was to meet the desire of the community, to help them. When it comes to the community benefit agreement, this isn't something we offered. This was part of the community saying we want to do the most good for everyone in this community. And we listened to that. We understood that there were concerns about how the economic benefits would occur. And so we are reacting and trying to do and be good guests in your community. We make mistakes. We own up to them. Okay? But we've been at this for 7 years. Our company has listened to folks, and I understand not everyone had an opportunity to ask questions. We've been trying to answer those feverishly and trying to provide information. I've built projects around North Dakota. This is a very common thing that comes up prior to the project being built, and it's very difficult. But what I can tell you is once they are built, a lot of this is going to settle down, and we do not want neighbors frustrated with neighbors. That's not what our company stands for and why we're here. So I want to clarify that as a neutral party. That's why I'm commenting under the neutral. What we want is to have rules. So the rules when we came here were established. However, the state requirement was much higher. So we knew we had to live above and beyond what the zoning was, and we have been planning for that. And not just living to the standard of the state, we're going above and beyond. So we're not trying to push the line and trying to, do as little as we can in the community. So one thing that hasn't gotten out recently, as part of the economic benefit agreement, we've heard from folks that there is concern within a mile of these wind turbines. We don't agree with the zoning change. We're 7 years into this. If we change the zoning at this point, after we've got a rural North Dakota cooperative basically betting their future on this project, we've got to go back and cancel that. And that's not something that we take lightly. So if we send a message to them that this area does not want to support what's good for rural North Dakota, I mean, it is just a difficult time to be doing this. And I understand, we want the feedback, so we want to take care of folks. So part of the economic development, we have a factor in there where folks that are within 1 mile of the project, their primary residence, they will receive roughly $95,000 over a 25-year period. We understand it's not going to solve all the problems. We're trying our best. This is happening so late in the game and changing of rules that it makes it very difficult. Now, I want to say everyone's wondering where exactly turbines are going to be placed. We are not applying for a permit yet. We need to understand what the ordinance is. We are going to design appropriately, taking this feedback that we're getting right now. And when that application comes forward, we'll be meeting with Eddy County, we'll be meeting with Wells County, and each individual township. And then we will be sitting down, we'll have another opportunity for folks to provide feedback on that. And only after all of that, then we go to the state. And the state has a very thorough process. It can be 6 to 12 months, and that will include hearings back in the local area. So there is a thorough process, and what we're asking is, please respect us. We are trying to be good guests in your community. We're trying to be responsive. We're doing our best. And I know I can't make everyone happy, right? And that's a difficult thing. And but I just want to say is we want the community to come together. We do not want divisiveness, but we can't. We have to do what we've been planning to do in a 1 mile setback. We'll cancel this project. Thank you.
Last, but certainly not least, Patty Larson.
So much what I've been thinking I've already heard from others tonight, but I just want to end with a couple things. I grew up here, Rockford is my hometown, rural living is my life, and I'm a big volunteer for a community. And I guess everybody has a different view of what a wind tower looks like. I don't look at them as an ugly machine. I've always thought they looked kind of graceful. The first ones I saw were on a ridge in California near my aunt's house. And that was, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. I always thought they looked graceful. I always thought the scene on a prairie was a windmill pumping water, an old windmill. So it's a different point of view I'm looking at. What I don't want to see is not so much the wind towers, but what I really don't want to see is the bricks on the Osby Hall crumbling onto the sidewalk and the roof of the old school in Cheyenne and the windows busted and the roof leaking, because we have a chance to bring some revenue to our communities that I think is pretty awesome, and I know we'll put it to very good use. I live yards away from the railroad tracks and the biggest elevator in Cheyenne, and there's plenty of fan noise and lights and railroad noise, and I guess I get used to it. Not trying to minimize how people feel about what they don't know yet, but I just really, really want to see our communities grow, and I think this is a really big opportunity we don't want to miss.
Anybody else want to speak? basically what I would love to see us do is, I don't think we should have a vote tonight. I think our voting meeting will be timed to be determined. And with that, I guess that's all we have.
The gentleman that spoke and invited us to come see him. With that, he's an awesome guy. I would almost think it would behoove the zoning board to take him up on his offer. To see what the points is, to see whatever. I mean, and I'm not making it as a motion. Something to support.
What?